English translation 270th contact. Wednesday, 3rd February 1999, 0005 hours.
Hello, you are quite punctual, my friend, since you are already here. Actually, I was not expecting you until later in the day or the next night. But still be welcome and greeted.
Also, I want to offer you a greeting. Yes, I am actually here early on this day because I was so pressed to see you.
Which of course could have been earlier and on another day.
You are wrong because I was otherwise very busy and indispensable. Also, I cannot stay too long because I am responsible for some important tasks that are still my duty to do in the next few hours.
Too bad. I would have liked to talk to you a little longer. But I also wanted to discuss some private things.
There will be enough time for that because my words do not mean that I can only visit you shortly. A certain period of time remains for it already.
Fine. I also have some questions that would be important to clarify.
Then we want to dedicate ourselves first to these interests.
Like you usually do? Then I have here the first question note. How is this now exactly with the first weekends of the months January, February, and March in relation to your clarifications and impulses, etc.? Can exceptions be made for special cases? As for example, if a woman has a childbirth, then the partner cannot be present at the birth, if that is desired? And further, what about members who are still pupils or students to be trained? Can they not also claim absences under certain conditions, such as school-related events and holidays, etc.?
In such cases you mention, it is indeed possible that exceptions can be made and the special clarifications, calculations, impulses, etc. can be brought to bear at a different time. But these should in fact be the only exceptions, apart from the guidelines given in the past, which should, however, only be made use of when it is inevitable. The reason for this is that at the beginning of January, February, and March of each year, we need our own presence in the area of the center on Friday evening, Saturday and Sunday until the last meditation, because there are individual work requirements for each member, which cannot be handled solely by any apparatus and devices, etc., but require human control, installation, monitoring, and other attendance. So the whole thing is very complex and labor-intensive. Therefore, if individual members are not present at the center at the specified times, then we must repeat the whole procedure for possible individual members on any suitable other days, which demands a lot of us and should therefore be avoided if possible.
That should be clear. Then I have another question here, which I am sure you can answer as well, since you have a very good psychological education in addition to medical science and a few dozen other sciences and professions. The question was recently discussed on television and read, why do women cut their hair after a divorce or after a separation from a partner and have new hairstyles done? In response to this question, several psychologists claimed that the women or girls in question were leaving something old behind them and wanted to start something new. A new life, with a new personality, so to speak, etc.
This is an error of Earth-human psychology known to me. The fact is that earthly psychologists still very often succumb to false judgments because their actual psychological knowledge is still extremely low and flawed. In reality, the female haircut you mentioned and the associated hairstyle renewal after a divorce or separation is based on the fact that the female persons concerned suffer from unconscious feelings of guilt towards the abandoned partner, or the unresolved cohabitation and the unmanaged interpersonal relationships and circumstances. With haircutting and new hairstyles and new ways of life, self-punishment is practically brought about, which is, however, denied by these as well as by the still rather uneducated and ignorant psychologists.
Quite interesting, and something that neither the psychologists nor the women and girls affected by it will be happy about, who will deny everything naturally because they want to be better knowing, as usual with the Earth humans.
That will probably be the case.
My next question concerns the race mixing. You and Quetzal, as well as Simyase, had once explained to me that the race mixing, caused for example by wars, asylum seekers and migrations of peoples or subpopulations as well as great emigrations, etc., means an extremely great danger for the existence of humankind, namely due to the most different blood mixtures and genetic influences, whereby humans would be softened and susceptible to disease as well as unable to live. As a result, you have declared, such degenerative changes would occur in humans over time that some people or tribes would become extinct. I just wanted to ask whether I interpret this correctly.
Your statement corresponds to correctness. Race mixing always and everywhere means a great danger for the continued existence of humanity. On the whole, different races should not and must not mix with each other or with each other to a greater extent, because a degeneration inevitably appears and drives humans to the brink of an inability to live. And
Also clear. Then I have a question here regarding diet. What is it about a diet according to the blood group and the zodiac sign if it is really to contribute to weight loss? Recently there has been a teaching circulating around the world which wants to make this known.
that is nonsense. A weight loss based on other facts, which are also known to earthly physicians.
Once again, a question concerning vegetarianism. Is it really as healthy as vegetarians always claim?
No, pure vegetarianism is unhealthy, which can also be recognized and proven again and again on the earth by pure vegetarians, who usually also have a sickly appearance. It has already been explained to you by the majority in this matter that the human being is a food omnivore and needs both vegetable and fleshly food. Plant substances alone never provide humans with all vital substances in such a wise that they could really live in an absolutely healthy wise. They need various animal substances, which are necessary and inevitable if a nutritionally and health-wise balanced life is to be the sense of the nutrition.
But there are all the esotericists, the spiritualized, and other vegetarians and vegans who disagree with this explanation and believe that they know everything better.
These erroneous and misguided ones probably cannot be helped so that they understand the truth.
Nobody says that fruit and vegetables should not be eaten, because humans really need them for food, but meat too, as well as other animal products.
Of course.
Then I have here a question concerning the prophecies, namely concerning the Pope John Paul II, on 6.8. 1978, Quetzal declared in an explanation on the prophecies that the third last Pope, John Paul II, that is to say Karol Wojtyla, would only hold his office for a short time before he blessed the temporal by an assassination on 13.5. 1981, but this was not the case at that time. Although the assassination took place at that time, John Paul II remained alive. Now the question was raised why prophecy had not been fulfilled, in complete contrast to many other prophecies which you have given, and which were fulfilled practically without exception. Did you make a mistake in this case? Or had circumstances changed that the course of events was different, perhaps in relation to the positive change in world politics that took place, etc.?
Quetzal's statements were indeed a prophecy, but they were to a certain extent foresighted, which also revealed the assassination that the Pope should have succumbed to. But in fact, as you mentioned, at that time, the political as well as the economic and generally consciousness-based psychic factors of humanity on the earth changed so positively in every respect, and with it the entire world, that there was a change in the line of the future, which for the time being postponed all events into the future, or made events which should have happened or should still happen ineffective, according to old prophecies. This does not mean, however, that all prophecies are null and void, but still exist to a large extent, so that they can still be fulfilled if the humanity of the earth does not carry out a positive change, through which changes are brought about in a positive sense, whereby, of course, the prophecies change or are not fulfilled. In the case of Pope John Paul II, as well as with regard to the further prophecies and the entire world, it is now simply the case that certain things no longer come true, while other facts of the prophecies simply shift into the future and thus to other times. The positive change in world events and thus also the consciousness psyche transformation of the earthly. Humanity was the Pope's good fortune in 1981, so that he remained in office until today and survived the assassination attempt.
However, it should also be noted that in prophecies there are usually always 7 different possibilities of fulfillment and effect, which are fundamentally different from each other. Consequently, depending on the change of the situation and the consciousness and psychological factor of the human beings, one or the other possibility can fulfill. Usually at least 5 of these different possibilities have to be taken into consideration, but the most negative form of prophecy is always mentioned.
That is correct.
Now I have something else here. Just today there was an article in the Tagesanzeiger, a newspaper. I want to read to you here, or if you want to read it to yourself, please. I have the question whether that is correct or not. What is written here with regard to the fact that people are supposed to have taken up HIV from the mentioned chimpanzees of the subspecies Pan troglodytes. You once gave me another explanation.
This article corresponds only partially to the facts, in the sense that the species of ape mentioned is actually a carrier of an HIV virus. But it is an erroneous assumption that the HIV epidemic was transmitted from the mentioned ape species to the humans of Earth, because in reality this was done by the ape species known as green monkeys. The sodomistic actions of irresponsible and abnormal humans, carried out with such monkeys, led to the transmission of the plague to terrestrial humans. This is an immunodeficiency disease, which our ancestors already noticed 11,000 years ago on the Earth with the green monkeys, which in later millennia also infected the chimpanzee subspecies Pan troglodytes.
Yes, now I remember. You were talking about the green monkeys back then. Now I have a few questions here in relation to...
Unfortunately, I have to interrupt you regarding these questions because I have already seen them lying on your desk before you had entered your workroom. The questions do not come from you, so I will not answer them either. Because our rule is that we do not answer any questions anymore, or that we do not get involved with any explanations, etc., that do not fall into your own question area.
Of course not. Excuse me, I did not want to betray you.
I did not think about that either, because otherwise you would have written this page with the different questions on your usual notepapers. Nevertheless, I have to point out once again that we have to stick with the fact that we do not answer any more questions that do not originate from yourself. Therefore, no further attempt should be made to insinuate questions to us, because we all have to adhere to the resolutions that have been passed. Any other action is illogical, also on the part of the group members, etc., if they bring questions to you for us, since they know that this should not be done.
You have explained this several times before, and I am sorry that they still acted against it, and I did not immediately reject the questions.
But it should be clear now.
I think so, yes.
I see that this was obviously your last note. So we can turn to the private areas, and I would also like to talk about certain health and disease factors of various group members in relation to smoking and its effects.
In this respect, however, it would certainly be good if we also had this in the contact report, so it would be good if you could make the relevant statements now.
You will probably be right about that. Well then, years ago I told you to tell various members of the group that smoking is very harmful to their health. But only Jacobus, Madeline, and Bernadette really tried to get rid of smoking addiction and really keep themselves free of it. Today, it is already the case that various members of the group are severely damaged by smoking, which also applies to the secret smokers, Freddie and Silvano, whose immune systems are just as severely damaged and partially out of order as with Christina, Louis, and Piero. Engelbert, whose nervous system is severely attacked, suffered serious damage through smoking, while Bridget's immune system suffered such damage that she already reacts extremely susceptibly to all sorts of health-endangering attacks from bacteria and viruses, which can be extremely dangerous for her, especially in her job. Edith should also be mentioned, whose immune system again shows considerable weaknesses and makes her very susceptible to diseases. In addition, the smoke poisons damage her memory in the form of short-term memory collapses that cause situation-related amnesia, which simply erases certain events and facts. A disease caused by toxins produced by tobacco and its chemical additives. Brunhilde also plays with her health by smoking. Because already her immune system is only partially intact, but also her stomach and her intestines are again affected, and she is on her way to causing old ailments again. It is also Louis whose lungs have already been attacked to such an extent that he has serious breathing difficulties. Not to mention the fact that his immune system is already extremely weakened, and he is becoming more and more susceptible to germs. But there are also the remaining group members who are still addicted to smoking. Also, their immune system is partially already heavily attacked, as for example with Christian K. and Corrine, as well as with Barbara. With Simone and Stefan, there are also certain immune damage and various other damage to the lungs, etc., as with all others, but with these two, the damage is not as far advanced as with all others. However, it would be very appropriate that all those addressed, as well as those not addressed, would finally free themselves from smoking. In the case of the aforementioned, the already existing damage will worsen even further, and even premature deaths can occur if smoking addiction is not given up in a short time. It would be extremely regrettable if this were to happen out of sheer irrationality. And not giving up smoking is indeed a matter of unreason, which is also psychologically steered, because the addiction to nicotine and the approximately 6,000 other tobacco poisons has a demoralizing effect on reason and psyche if it is not satisfied.
But the addiction to smoking is not easy to combat for many human beings.
That is probably correct, but nevertheless is only a pure matter of reason, and the will be built up from it. Just in this matter, with the removal of the smoking addiction, it is proven which human is big and powerful enough in their thinking, feeling, and acting to be able to control themselves and be master of themselves. And it turns out who is actually endowed to a good extent with his or her reason and is able to use it in a healthy and evolutionary framework. And thus, I have arrived at the point at which I would like to move on to things that are no longer to be officially explained.
Thank you for your comments and explanations. One thing I would be interested in, though, is when you clarify all these things, because I do not think this is done via the control disk, because this is one of those individual concerns that you have to handle and monitor personally, or am I mistaken?
Your assumption is correct. Among all the concerns we clarify and carry out on the first 3 weekends of each year, these things also belong. And since everything is extremely time-consuming and costly, all members should always be present at these times and only be absent in real emergencies. The whole thing is connected with a lot of activity if we have to dedicate ourselves to the same occupation again outside the mentioned times.
That should be clear. But I still have a question. Originally, the meeting was finished after the general meeting, which takes place on Saturday evening. But Quetzal told me at the beginning of the 80s that from now on, the meeting was valid until after the last meditation of the first weekend Sunday, for which the whole group had done a lot because of the meditation. Is it now correct, then, that the first weekend meeting, as well as the third weekend meeting, must be held as we have been accustomed to for years?
Yes, that is correct. Because our work on the first 3 weekends of the year is calculated from Friday evening to Sunday evening after the last meditation, as are all the other meetings during which we are also active in various things for the entire core group personnel. These other meetings, however, are so different in relation to our work for the group members that it is not absolutely necessary for everyone to be present. So in certain cases, as they are recorded in writing with you, absences can be made.
Thank you. Finally, this is clear, because so far this has not been written anywhere. Then now to the private.